Well, hello everybody. My name is Hal Otey, and I am here to talk to you today about all things retirement, which is a theme that we've been talking about now for a number of months. But what I want to focus on today primarily, and what you're going to actually get out of this video, is more of a in-depth look at how a true retirement plan might be helpful in guiding you towards some of the decisions you're going to have to make as you start thinking about retirement and making the decision of actually when are you going to retire. Now, several videos ago, we talked about some of the most important numbers that you would need to think about as you're planning for retirement. And some of those numbers relate to the amount of income you need. Some relate to how many years before you plan to retire. We talked about inflation. We talked about rates of return on investment. We talked about your sources of income, like your Social Security, your pensions. We talked about whether you're going to work part-time. So there was a number of things that we talked about, but that was a little bit more just talking about the numbers themselves. What I want to do today is actually dive into what it looks like in a financial plan. So I'm excited to be able to share this with you. And I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get started on looking at what a plan is going to look like for you. So I'm going to share my screen. And as I do that, I am going to talk with you about my sample client here, and this is going to be Frank and Melissa Sample. Okay, so here's some of the facts. So Frank and Melissa, they're in their early 60s. Frank is 62, and I'll actually just go ahead and highlight that for you. Melissa is age 60. He's an engineer. She works as a medical assistant part-time. But they have good income. He's making about $115,000 a year. She's making part-time income of around $37,000. And their goal is to retire at Frank's age 66. Melissa would retire at her age 65. So she might actually work a little bit longer after Frank retires. But let's get into looking at some of the numbers and how that might actually look. So what I'm going to first of all do is I'm going to bring you into, let me get rid of those. We're going to look at a cash flow page first. So in doing this, what I want you to see, now this, before we get into the specific numbers, I want to look at just this particular graph here, and I'm going to circle that up with a highlighter here. So what this graph is showing us is that they're going to retire in 3 or 4 years. But look what happens to their assets, and that's really what that graph is looking at, is as they age through the system, that graph begins to go down, and they actually run out of money in about 20 years. I think about the time Frank hits age 84 or 85. So that's kind of a starting point for where we want to get to. Now, just going back and looking at how those numbers play out, I'll dig into some of this. So I've already mentioned looking at income. So when we look at the income that they're earning right now, Frank is currently earning, and I'm going to erase this again. So I'm going to erase what I had on there before, but so now let's look at, here we have Frank's earnings. So he's going to work 3 more years. He's, like I said, he's earning about $115,000. We typically build in about 3.5% inflation on earnings, and then looking at a long-range plan, we try to factor in about 3.5% so that we make sure that our income is going to increase over that period of time to keep up with inflation. You can see Melissa's part-time income here. Now, a couple things you'll notice. So we talked about, what do we factor in for income streams that somebody might have. So Melissa, fortunately enough, actually worked for a hospital that had a pension. So her pension is going to be $9,300 a year, which works out to about $840 a month in income. And then you'll notice there's Social Security over here, and I'm actually going to dig into that one for just a second So one of the nice things we can do with this planning system that we have, our wealth management system, is we can dig in and look at what happens with Social Security. So some of the things that you need to be aware of. So we decided that Frank would take his Social Security at his full retirement age. You can see that is roughly going to be age 68 and I think 8 months. So you'll see that at age 67, by the time he's 67, he's earned $31,000. And then when you look at by the time he's 68, he's getting it for the full 12 months, it's around $34,500 a year. So, and then when you look at Melissa's, you're going to see kind of a combination here. So now she's not going to get hers until age 67. But what you'll notice here is we've got her income coming in, but then we have this spousal benefit. And so the way that works is they're going to look at Melissa's Social Security and determine whether what she earned on her own or is drawing half of Frank's going to be more than what she would get on her own. As it turns out, she's going to get a couple $1,000s a year more, almost $3,000 a year more actually, by drawing on Frank's. So when you look at their total Social Security benefit, the first year that Frank gets his full amount, we're looking at about $34,500, and then by the time Melissa's kicks in, actually at the full tilt, you're going to be looking at a little over $53,000 a year. So that's looking at just their income streams. Now, in looking at that, so when we go back and look at not just their income, but now we're going to look at their expenses. That's one of the other things that we said we really needed to be aware of. So when you look at expenses, what you're going to see is they have living expenses of around $90,000 a year. So that's an estimate. We don't know that for a fact by the time they get into retirement because they're still working, and people tend to start looking at how they're going to adjust their income, once they get into their retirement years. But they still have a house payment. So their mortgage balance that they owe, they're still paying a little over $1,200 a month in a mortgage payment. And you can see that's going to run out until about Frank's age 75. They also have some insurance premiums they're paying, which includes some long-term care insurance. It includes some group life insurance, which will end when they retire. And then Frank has a more permanent policy that he'll stick with when he retires. And then one of the things you're going to notice, and this might, if we have time, we'll do this, but you'll notice the taxes. So while Frank and Melissa are still working, their tax liability is in that $35,000, $36,000 a year range. And then when Frank retires, we still got some taxes on Melissa's income. But then you're going to notice there's a couple of years where there's very little tax, and then maybe $5,000 in that year. And it's not until they turn like 69 or 70 that they start paying much in the way of taxes. Now, part of that, as you'll see, is because they have some money that's not in retirement plans that they'll be able to utilize for a few years. But one of the things that we talked about in another one of our videos is we talked about the idea of doing some Roth conversions in low tax years. Now, again, we may not get to that in this particular video, but just be aware that's a planning strategy that you need to be aware of for future reference. So when we look at their total expenses, we're looking at around $149,000 to $150,000 a year while they're still working. Once they retire, those are going to drop down to something in the $130,000 a year range. Now, you think about, their gross income right now. So Frank's at 115, she's at 130, or she's at 37. So you're looking at, close to 150. So they're going to back this down a little bit. So if we scroll back up, we're going to go back to the overall cash flow report now, and this is what you're going to see from a retirement standpoint. Now, we already told you as we looked at this that they ran out of money somewhere around Frank's age 85. So what you're going to see on this over here is you'll see their total portfolio assets. Now, they're a little over $1 million. Now, you all out there in YouTube land, video land, you might look at that and say, wow, $1 million. I mean, they're crazy if they can't live on $1 million. And they're able to do that, and you'll see that that $1 million portfolio stays pretty well intact up until about the time they get in their mid 70s, and then you're going to see that inflation starts to catch up with them. Now, just to make sure that I'm showing you what I want you to see here, what you're going to notice is that they're going to run out of money here down here around Frank's age 85-ish, somewhere in that neighborhood. So think about this. You've worked a full career. Most of the people that we work with have put in 30, 40-year careers. They've worked hard. They've raised their families. They've started to accumulate money, and they're getting to a place where they're trying to make these retirement decisions. And think about how awful that would feel if you saw that by the time you're in your mid 80s that you're running out of money. Now, obviously, we can make some adjustments along the way, but the purpose of a plan is to show you what you can do now, what you can prepare for over the next few years to try to get yourself in shape to be able to retire and have confidence when you retire so that you know that you're not going to run out of money. So what I want to do now is I want to go up to a planning section. And this is really kind of the heart of what we do for our clients in terms of helping them make some decisions. So this is that very same graph that we looked at. The nice thing about this particular graph is we're able to actually hover over it and show where these things happen. So you'll see that last year that it's age 85 when Frank runs out of money. But this is what we call our base facts. Now, what I want to do is we made some adjustments here. So as we look at this, I want you to take this in steps with me. So what we did first is we said, okay, let's assume that Melissa and Frank will work 1 year longer. And you're going to think, well, difference is that going to make? Now, you'll see these green bars that start to show up above the dark blue ones. And what that's telling us there is that that is extra money that's been created by Frank and Melissa working a year longer. And you think about it, what does that do for them? Number one, it gives you another year of $115,000 of salary for Frank and another $37,000 for Melissa. It also gives them more money going into their retirement plan, and it also means they don't have to start withdrawing from their investments or retirement plans for another year. And it's really kind of amazing of how much extra money that creates. Now, down at the bottom of the report here, what you'll see is that the value gain, now that's over the remainder of their lifetime. Now, we run people out to age 90. We usually bump them off, so to speak, at age 90. So that's $444,000 that they gain just by waiting a year longer. Now, they don't get it all in the first year. In fact, if you hover up over this, you'll see that that first year made roughly $102,000 difference for them. Well, that makes sense because Frank's still working, Melissa's still working now after taxes and everything, and some extra earnings on a retirement plan that they didn't have to withdraw from, et cetera, et cetera. That creates an extra $102,000 for them. But over time, that continues to spread. So the compounding of that money over the next 20 to 25 years makes that $440,000 difference for them. So that's just adding one component to it. Now let's do another one. Let's say they don't need $90,000 a year. They really only need $85,000 a year to live. Now what that did is that expanded that out, and now the difference is $813,000 difference for them. And what you're also going to notice in this, if I can erase that, what you're going to notice is that, see, Frank, where that little arrow is, that's when he dies at age 90. Melissa out here would be age 90, and if we bump her off at age 90, so to speak, there is still about $69,000, which you can see in the little block there, $69,000 remaining. Now, so what I'm trying to get you to see is there's little adjustments we can make in different areas. And you've heard the saying that the little things done over time are the things that can make a huge, huge difference for people. You know, whether it's the way you eat, it's the way you exercise, it's the way you sleep, it's the way you treat your family or others. It's the amount of money you save. The little things that you do over and over and over again over a long period of time are the things that make a huge difference, okay? So now let's add another component. Let's say that Frank increases the contributions to his 401k from 10% to 15%. And let's say at the same time, maybe we increase the earnings on that 401k from a little over 6% per year to about 7.5%. Now, you know, there's no guarantee that that'll happen, but at least it gives you an idea. Hey, if the rate of return that we get on money is a little higher over the years, now the difference that makes down here is $1,167,000. So if we can do that for Frank, I don't want to be a male chauvinist and not include Melissa in that, right? So if we click on Melissa's and we have her also increase her contributions and again the rate of return, now we go from $1,150,000 to about $1,300,000. And then if we also do that with their joint investments, we're not actually increasing the amount of savings, but what we did is we increased the rate of return again from about 6.35% to 7.5 roughly. So moderate increases in the rate of return on those 3 blocks of investments. So if we do that, now we're sitting down here with almost $1,400,000 of value that was gained. And the other thing you're going to notice that we look at, if you look at how much longer that retirement money lasts, Melissa is now age 95 by that point in time. So the point of all this is to say, if you've got a way to figure out what you can adjust and make modifications to, it could really add some value in terms of how you plan for retirement. So I hope this video has been helpful. I hope it lets you see that there's definitely some planning that people can do in order to make things work for them. So I hope you found this video valuable, and I hope it allows you to see that there are definitely some things that you can do to be able to look at retirement, make some adjustments, make those little adjustments along the way so that it can make a big, big difference. Now, in this particular case, Frank and Melissa have to work 1 more year. Now, they don't have to, but they could say, well, can we live on less? Can we work a little longer? I mean, there's 4 or 5 options that everybody has when it comes to looking at their retirement. So again, I hope you found this to be valuable. If you did, I would like for you to click on our subscribe button down below and also click on the notification bell so that you're notified when we do these types of videos. And again, remember, this is Hal Otey talking about all things retirement. And also, we have a masterclass that we have put together. So if you would like to get a bigger picture of how some of this type of planning may impact you and what are the different things that you can consider as you start thinking about retirement and about trying to put all these different pieces together, your income, your investments, how do you generate income off those, what are inflation and taxes and all the different things that go into looking at what I call all things retirement, then this masterclass that we put together gives you a much more comprehensive view of how that might work for you. So please go to our masterclass, and obviously, if you decide that working with somebody like this would be of value to you, there's a way to find that in the masterclass to be able to get in contact with us. So again, this is Hal Otey Financial signing off for all things retirement. Have a blessed day.